mic turned on? That's the question. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're okay. Hope you're well. Sorry for the mic being muted then. Must have just caught it. What's happened since we last did a live stream? Last Tuesday live stream, at least. It's been a couple of weeks now, so going back to like the 8th of July. And let's not beat around the bush. What's happened? Bitcoin actually in that time has made a new all-time high, 123 and some change thousand. But actually, the main real thing is the drop in Bitcoin dominance and the rise in altcoins. And I've already seen some comments in the chat, but I suppose the real question is, do we have an alt season, a genuine alt season on our hands? Have we seen Bitcoin dominance actually roll over, or is this just a bit of a pullback? I'm trying to sit in the forward class of that, looking to see whether or not we got an alt season. I think there's probably one or two challenges just ahead of us, or confirmation points that we need to have a look at, which I'll discuss later on. But feel free to just look at or add to the poll, contribute as you see fit. We can discuss later on. Erjan, I am going to cover your point that you've made there. So I will cover that later on. Not really too much news. As I say, I was away last week, so I wasn't really following too much. And I think the real story is just how well altcoins are doing, in particular Ethereum. We're going to go through that. We're going to I know on Fridays we try and do a bit of charting. We're going to do a lot more charting towards the end of this on lower time frames and just kind of see where we are. But let's just jump into I've not even got my face cam on. Not sure why. Let me just sort that out. Don't know where it's gone. There it is. So here we are, charts that we've usually seen. And actually what you can kind of see on the uppermost chart at the moment is Bitcoin's kind of just coiling. Had that move up to 23,000, as I said. Since then, we've kind of been just working in that range about 116 to about 120. I think almost each of the last three-day candles, so over the last 10 days or so, we've kind of ranged within that one. It's a similar kind of situation we've seen back in May, also back in sort of December, where we have those coilings. And yeah, we're just waiting to see whether or not that next move has happened. But what that has led to, well, not necessarily led to, but because Bitcoin hasn't really done anything, and altcoins have seen that surge, what we've seen is Bitcoin dominance fall away. And it's fallen from 66% all the way down to pretty much 60% in a matter of weeks, which has really just pushed total to altcoins, in particular Ethereum, but plenty of altcoins sort of getting double-digit gains over that period. And for those of us that have altcoin heavy portfolios, it's actually made us want to look at our portfolio again. So yeah, a very good position to be in. We're going to talk about dominance a lot more a little bit later on. You can kind of see the total market cap too. So I was giving it a lot of stick through months of May and June, just loitering around that sort of 1.1 to 1.2 trillion region. We were looking at that 1.26 trillion, 1.25, I suppose, breakthrough. And as you can see, over the last 2 weeks, we've soared through that. Matter of fact, since the beginning of the month, we've put on nearly $400 billion in the altcoin market. So no small amount there, as I said. And then we look at BitTensor on the right-hand side. And again, we've made that move from 320. We are running into, and we have run into the last couple of times, wicking into this sort of trend line that I've drawn, just connect everything over there, which we'll talk about. But little story with BitTensor on my behalf, try and be as transparent as I can. So I did say before I went away, I got back in at around about 363, I think it was. Actually turned out I didn't fully get back in. When I sold some of my BitTensor, I moved some of it to a different exchange because I wanted to trade the USDT. I never bothered trading it. When I went back in, I kind of forgot about that. So I'm not fully back in to BitTensor, which is a bit of a shame because obviously we've had that good move. And I'm not really stressing it. I've decided I'm not going to chase it. I'm not going to put that money in BitTensor straight away. I'm actually trading it at the moment. And I've been looking at some trades. I've got just only one running live at the moment, XRP. We'll talk about a little bit later on. But I suppose if nothing else, just from a mentality point of view, you don't have to, if you miss something, there's always another plan. There's always another opportunity. And I'm just trying not to fret too much about missing that. It's around about $15,000, $20,000 worth. So there's no small amount, but I think I can probably do something with that free trading. Obviously, there's risks to that, I accept. So that's just down to my discipline, I suppose. But that's where we sit with those. Like I said, there's not really too much news that I want to talk about. When you scroll through this, I just get the feeling there's quite a lot of bullish news articles going out at the moment. And why not? You know, altcoins are flying. Bitcoin just had its all-time high. We've seen all of the crypto acts, the anti-CBDC, the Clarity Act with regulations, the Genius Acts with stablecoins, all went through last week. Donald Trump's buying it for his own company, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, there's plenty of good things here. And it just kind of feels like the news is sort of leaning that way. Yeah, we won't dwell too much on whether or not we're trying to suck retail in. But the reality of it is making new all-time highs with the like of Bitcoin. A new all-time high recently with XRP, some of the legacy altcoins. That is the type of thing that is going to draw retail in. And so, you know, I just feel like the news at the moment is going to be quite heavy towards that. So there are a couple of news articles sprinkled in, but it's just to kind of move the story along as to what I want to talk about. So we'll jump straight into the 12-hour chart for Bitcoin. And you can kind of get a much better picture at the moment with how it's just ranged over the last couple of weeks, I suppose. We've got that liquidity, short liquidations building up in and around the all-time high from 121 to 123,000. And then we've got those long liquidation points, from 115 to 113. Obviously, they're going to have been closer to price action, but because it's just ranged, we've taken it out a little bit as we've gone along. And this is kind of where we are left with. So you know, sideways action, no bad thing. After a nice move up from 108,000 to 123,000, we want to see that stability. And as I mentioned earlier on, particularly for our altcoin portfolios, that recycling of the money from Bitcoin into altcoins is helping us move along there. And I will say, it does feel like, although total market cap has increased, total 2, total 3 has kind of increased by a greater amount, which suggests that actually there is that recycling, mincing of profits from Bitcoin into altcoins, which is what we want to see in a traditional alt season. Bitcoin, Ethereum, large caps, small caps, you know the story. Now, these fibs, I've had them on for years, to be honest with you, at least 18 months. They're originally drawn all the way back to March 24. They've worked quite well. We kind of broken through that 2 level, which was sort of around about 110, which was kind of the previous all-time high. And we're kind of sitting in a little bit in no man's land at the moment. Now, there are some fib levels that I just haven't bothered to include as we've gone higher up, which is, when it gets to 1.272 or 1.414. And I can't remember the reason why those figures are chosen. It's something to do with like either the square root or squaring of Fibonacci levels, etc. So they are there. But if I add those on, waffling away just to try and explain, if I add those back on just for now, what we actually kind of get to see is potentially another couple of sets of targets. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. I'll move this box out of the way as well. Suddenly that all-time high and the rejection from it, 123, but the 2.272 fib level, which granted I don't normally have on the chart, but it is there, 122,250 moved back down. And then we got that 2.241 at 130,000. And I think for me, I will leave these ones on just for the time being, but I think they may be the next key level. Certainly, obviously, we've got to break 122 to reclaim that new all-time high. But that 130 level, I think, is kind of where I'm going to be looking in the interim. It doesn't mean that I don't think we're going to get to 140. I've kind of given my views, unfortunately, very politician-type views, anywhere from about 145 to about 245,000 of where I think the top's going to be. And that's just based on a variety of on-chain metrics and TA. So, yeah, not the best of figures I accept. But I certainly think E140 would be the absolute lower end of that. So, a good position that we find ourselves in with this. And again, just let's take a step back. Bitcoin here, is there any reason for us to fret? Are we out of the bull market? Well, the bull market, most people will agree, blue line here, 50 EMA on the weekly time frame. We lose that, we're generally entering into that bear market. Granted, we have to make the top and then fall quite a way before we break it. But what we're really looking for confirmation of the bear market is a close below the 50 EMA. And we're not there. We haven't been there. Actually, we've not even touched the 50 EMA since the 7th of April. And you can actually just argue that really we've just been snaking up this line, which granted is kind of where the 50 EMA is. So potentially, do I see us at some stage coming back and retesting this 50 EMA? Absolutely. Or this white line, trend line, however you want to look at it. Absolutely. When do I think that may happen? I've absolutely no idea. But, you know, even if it was to drop down today to 92,000, that's going to hurt. I assure you. I don't think it will happen today. It'll be more of a sort of a gradual sideways action and then a fall away. But, you know, we may well see that there. But as long as we can stick it above the white line, the 50 EMA, then we're absolutely fine. The one thing we do need to bear in mind, obviously, is if we're believing in the 4-year cycle, is somewhere around about here, plus or minus 30 days, we should be seeing the end of it. So we do want to see that next move up, and maybe we don't retest that. If we do, we'd want to hit it sooner rather than later. You know, we start moving drastically to the right-hand side of this, we may have to rethink that 4-year cycle model. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm only going to touch on this very briefly because someone asked me in a DM, when's the next FOMC meeting? It's next week. A lot of people get excited about these because we're thinking rate cuts. That's going to move the market along. Next Wednesday's when it is. It's a 95% chance at the moment. Then we're not going to get a cut. I don't think that's surprising. Stock market's at all-time high. Crypto's doing well. Employment's doing okay. Just a lot of the data is looking pretty strong at the moment. And so, you know, we kind of need to curb that a little bit. And we know that Powell likes to be data driven. There is going to be a break now. After this one, it won't be until 18th of September, I think. 17th of September, I was pretty close for the rate cuts. But hopefully that answers that question for you. And we'll just move quickly along. Now, one of the things that I do find quite interesting is that Donald Trump's media company, Trump's Media, has now reported effectively a $2 billion investment in Bitcoin. Now, the term they use is Bitcoin and Bitcoin-related securities. I don't know what the wallets are, so I can't guarantee how that split actually goes. But I've gone onto this website, which we've used before, tracking public companies, and Donald Trump's Media and Technology Group, it claims it has 18,430 Bitcoin under its belt, assuming that they are, you know, actual Bitcoins and not wrapped Bitcoin or what have you. And giving it 120,000 per Bitcoin, that's going to be around about 2.3 billion. So the numbers kind of add up. What I find quite amusing with this is, you know, the President of the United States, who has been pushing cryptos for the best part of a year now, has certainly made sure that his company is well positioned before he even thinks about, you know, pushing the Loomis Act, the Bitcoin Act, where they're going to buy 1 million Bitcoin over a 5-year period. It's funny that he's trying to position himself there. The cynic in me and the cynic on crypto Twitter are effectively saying, you know, he's doing this before some major announcement about Bitcoin, which is going to take that price to Valhalla. It wouldn't surprise me in the foggiest if that's the case. But I think this is, you know, not polite, that's not the right word, just a gentle kind of reminder that there is good news still on the horizon. And if the President of the United States is, I'm not saying he's ordering it, but his company is still continuing to purchase, I think that's still a good rubber stamp as the like of BlackRock keep on buying. Interestingly, with BlackRock, they didn't buy anything yesterday. Matter of fact, yesterday across the board, not one ETF bought any Bitcoin. There was some sales going on, which, you know, people taking profit. I don't know if the sales were because, you know, they were then recycling that into Ethereum. You know, we don't know. And I don't know what's happened today, but generally still a very black, you know, set of figures here. BlackRock, I think their value is like 93 billion in their Bitcoin ETF. So unbelievable figures there. But what is interesting is the Ethereum ETF flow, because this has woken up over the last 2 weeks, coinciding with Bitcoin dominance's drop and Ethereum's rise in price. And if you just take the first column here, I know we don't look at it that often, BlackRock. I mean, these are millions. Okay, so in the last 5 days, we are talking best part of $1.5 billion. BlackRock investors have invested in Ethereum or the Ethereum ETF. So certainly, you know, for best part of 18 months, the Ethereum ETF was a bit of a laughing stock, but it has woken up. I think BlackRock now have about 2.3 million Ethereum under their belt. So yeah, again, an incredible amount of Ethereum being purchased. Whether or not that's going to be held like in sort of in that strategic reserve type approach, we'll have to wait and see. And I did see someone post in Discord, and I tried to watch the video on it today. MicroStrategy coming up with another preferred shared option, some perpetual 9% annual return. I can't really work it all out, but just another way of bringing money in to buy more Bitcoin. But again, they are, you know, I think they're, including their Bitcoin reserves, they are more valuable than the likes of Nvidia, which I'm not sure, or done better this year than Nvidia, should I say. So yeah, interesting to see that the big players still buying even at these incredibly high prices. So great news for the continuation of Bitcoin. And Erjan, I am going to get to your question. I'm just working through some of these. So then we get to classic articles like this, came out yesterday. Altseason is here, 5 things we need to know in Bitcoin this week. And I'm not necessarily too bothered. There is still a CME gap. We won't bother on that one. We'll just wait and see whether or not that comes into close. We talked about consolidation. Powell, yeah, I'm not bothered about that one. Altseason frenzy taking over. And this is the kind of thing that is starting to get people excited. And we are starting to see on crypto Twitter, on YouTube, you know, people starting to, you know, talk more positively about altcoins, in particular Ethereum. I mean, don't get mistaken. Ethereum is still under 4,000. So we've seen it higher this cycle than it currently is. Remember, it's still under its $4,800 all-time high that it set last cycle, but it has moved. I mean, we'll see in a moment, over the last 4 weeks, around about $1,500. So about 60% of its value has gone up. But this is what is fueling the alt season, or certainly the alt movement at the moment, in my opinion. It kind of goes on to talk about, so I'm going to cover all of these in a moment. That's fine. It's just about stocks. Okay, perfect. Let's get into the charts that this is looking at. So Bitcoin dominance, as we've mentioned here. So Bitcoin dominance trugging along all the way nicely up to 66%, as I said, and then suddenly, beginning of this month, we've just seen that roll over. Now, for the first couple of weeks, fairly short chart, you know, retraces 66% down to around about 65% over 3 weeks. Not particularly that big a deal, but last week's candle, you know, this was an incredible 4% drop in Bitcoin dominance in a week. That is the largest drop, I think, in the Bitcoin dominance since sort of this drop from, you know, late 2020, the alt season, the alt run from late 2020 into sort of May 21. And I know that some of these candles look bigger, but I'm on the, if I go on the linear chart, you can kind of actually see now that this is much larger. Sorry, we just draw on here. This one here is larger than this one here. And we've actually got to wait for this one, which you can't see because my camera's in the way, before that takes effect. So yeah, that was a large move that occurred. And okay, we are starting to see a little bit of a recovery at the moment, but this is the kind of thing we need to see. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. You know, it's all right having these pullbacks every so often. We want to see the waterfall. The question now is this the start of the waterfall? So as good as this move has been, you know, for me, there's a level there that we need to consider. And then there's also a level here that we need to consider. And it's great that we've started to make that move back down, but we want a real confirmation. I mean, even if we lose this first upper level in and around here, and we make our way back down before a bounce, that's going to be another 5-6%. What do you think that's going to do to altcoins? 5-6% Bitcoin dominance being lost. We're going to see these moves much higher. But realistically, if we want to see an alt season that we've seen, you know, previously, we want to be seeing actually this cascade all the way back down. And now to get to Erjan's question, he's kind of put, hi, evening everybody. In response to your poll, seems a little early for alt season. Doesn't that usually start when BTC has pretty much peaked? Isn't it supposed to go from from Bitcoin to ETH to alts to memes? Okay, so addressing that one first, no, not necessarily. So don't forget that Bitcoin dominance can drop whilst Bitcoin's price, USD value, continues to increase. It's just more about where the market share is. So as we can see here in the past cycle, and we'll zoom in on this one, we had Bitcoin, for those of you that were in it, and I appreciate that might not be all of you, but sort of September 2020, Bitcoin was around about 7,000, and it just shot from 7,000 to over 40,000, and it kind of left alts behind. So we got to about 46,000, I think, by the end of the year, beginning of 21. And don't forget, Bitcoin's price then went on to 64,000. So it had another 20 odd grand or 20 grand climb, but altcoins overtook. And so Bitcoin's dominance fell away. And we had, and get not that one. We had effectively 4 months of altcoins running. So it doesn't have to happen at the end of the market. And also don't forget that this occurred in the April 21 top rather than the actual all-time high that was set in November. So no, that doesn't necessarily need to happen. You go on to say that this is your first bull season. Trust me, when this happens, your portfolio is wild. I struggle to understand how people can concentrate in their day jobs without just constantly looking at portfolios, because the rate that this is falling off, and assuming you position yourself correctly in altcoins, just the altcoins are absolutely popping off. Similar story had in sort of late 2017 with these drops here. I mean, this one was all of 2017 really, that fall away, and this was 95 down to 35. So 60% of Bitcoin dominance was lost, which is why it was such a frenzy of retail in late 2017. This one would just talk only 70% down to 40, so only a 30% drop. But yeah, that's kind of where this is ultimately moving towards. So an interesting place for that to be. And where does it generally first fall into? Well, it falls into Ethereum, and I've given Ethereum pretty bad rep this cycle. I still think it has performed poorly compared to a lot of other altcoins out there. However, the last 4 weeks, it's pretty much not necessarily led the pack, because there are altcoins that have done better than it, but it has done what it is supposed to do. It has taken advantage of Bitcoin just stalling in price and value, whatever you want to call it, whether it be BTC, USDT, stablecoins, whatever, moving from Bitcoin into the altcoins. And as I say, we've seen that price move from here, and it's an 82 from peak to peak over the last 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, a strong move up there. Now we're going to have a look with vector candles and EMAs a little bit later on. I kind of feel that if you're just looking at on the weekly time frame, you're probably thinking what I'm thinking, kind of a little overextended. I wouldn't mind a little bit of a consolidation itself or a pullback to some sort of level before we have that next move up. But we've also just got to say to ourselves, well, what levels should we be looking at? I mean, obviously, these levels here, just over 4,000 being a psychological level, but actually the last 1, 2, 3, 4 times we breached 4,000. In fact, every time this cycle we've reached 4,000, we've been rejected from it. And you can kind of actually have a look, with the exception of the November run, 4,000 has actually stood pretty firm for us. So there's a little bit of work to do, but it's ran from 2,000 to just under 4,000 at the moment, which I'm plenty to work to get to. If we can break through that, then okay, we can then start talking about the all-time high, 4,800, and where that may go beyond. In terms of weekly time frame, we'll have a look, as I say, daily and below with everything else later on. Just looking at price action and levels that we maybe we want to see it come back in some sort of consolidation. It's hard to kind of say, maybe in and around here. So that changeover at 3,000 effectively, where we've had a bit of interaction down here. It's probably better that I actually drew a rectangle, because you could argue it could go down to 2,800, take it in those zones there. But that kind of level where we had this double top unfortunately play out, and we've had that kind of topping pattern where we break back through. I think that's probably a logical level for us to have a look at. I realize that I'm on the linear chart there, so let me just put this on the logarithmic. And then if actually we did some sort of trend line here, kind of try to, no, that's going to have to be down here because I can't draw to save my life. Again, there's some sort of confluence here with this trend line going up. And so, we want to kind of see it come back down. Maybe that's the point of confluence there. Something certainly to look at just from a bigger point of view. But right now the trend is up, and, we need to just respect that as we are moving through it. And then we have a look at ETH versus Bitcoin, because that has really struggled this cycle. And it's been a bit of a bloodbath for those that have held ETH. And we've just seen it kind of roll away. Now, where did we get down to? We got down to just under that 0.02 level, which we saw again in 2019. And we bounced from that. And we've seen a very strong move again from that bounce, which is obviously good to see. Unexpected given that Bitcoin dominance has fallen. But then we start to think, well, okay, well, what is really going on here? And if we have a look, just look at that. I've just done one fib from the start of this fall to where it peaked at the bottom. Where's it gone? It's gone straight through, and we've just rejected off the 0.5 fib level. Now, it's 5 days left on the candle. Okay, so plenty to go through, but, just a sign just to consider of what that might be. And if you wanted to, just take it a little bit further back, you could be, well, actually, if we take it all the way from August 22 to pretty much the back end of the bear market and through, and actually, again, we've just cleanly bounced up and rejected off that 382 level there. So, I'm just trying to temper that excitement, just Ethereum versus BTC. That's not talking about what the value of ETH could go. ETH could still go up to 8,000 with this. Just means that BTC is going to climb again itself. So, just bear that one in mind. And if you think, there were times where people kind of wanted to get ETH BTC back to sort of 0.1 level, I think those days are kind of long gone. I mean, ETH would need to get to $12,000 without Bitcoin moving at all for it to achieve that right now. So it does seem like a bit of an ask with where we sit, but stranger things have actually happened. And then if we look at USDT dominance, so just, well, it's stablecoin dominance, but just looking at USDT, we've kind of seen these rallies before. So, this was, granted, this could be sidelined money just going into Bitcoin as well, but we've seen that massive drop down, which was the build up towards the ETF launches. Then we saw President Trump winning his election. And again, we saw that the market rallied hard off that news, particularly altcoins again. And we're kind of seeing this happening right now. And this is actually happening from April. So from the bottom of the tariffs, we've started to see that. And yes, I accept that a lot of that goes into Bitcoin. I'm not trying to deny that. But when we kind of look at levels, we think, well, again, we may be coming sort of close. Like, I think that's a fair level to draw in terms of potential to bounce. Now that's still 0.3% left to run, which would show a good amount. But once, or if we get down to this level, I think we just need to be thinking with our heads, not with our hearts or our Lamborghini brochures, as to just what's going on here. We want to see it punch through. Of course we do. That would be the continuation of the alt season, in my opinion. And then really, I mean, you could argue there's a level there, but I think actually we'd be looking to see if we could get down into sub 3 at 2.6 level, really taking that alt season to another point. So I think that's interesting to see. We go into total 2. Now total 2 is, as you would expect, that strong move up. Total 3 looking very similar, but in both instances, we actually still haven't made an all-time high on those yet. We are nicely on the way, and I'm not trying to undermine the move that we've made within that, but we haven't made that clean move just yet. How much have we got to go? I mean, we've got about 80 billion to do it in total 3, and approximately 100 billion in total 2. So, okay. So what options, do we have? Well, the one thing that does spring to mind, in my opinion, with Bitcoin dominance, and we are back on the Bitcoin dominance chart right now, is there is an argument to be said that maybe it isn't a true alt season and we're just actually having a bit of a pullback. Now, this trend line here goes all the way back to the end of the bear market. So October, November 2022, FTX collapse and Bitcoin dominance starts to surge back up. And we can kind of see that in this period, we've only hit it, I appreciate, 3 or 4 times, but each time we've come onto this trend line, we bounce back up. And it's exactly how we have reacted at the moment. And so the argument could be that actually we're just naturally pulling back down and we need something to go. So we've got a couple of candles. We need those couple of candles, weekly candles, to try and confirm whether or not with that. I mean, hell, I'll take one long red weekly candle down, similar to what we had last week, and then I'll be like, okay, fair enough. But yeah, we've just got to see how we interact within this. And I don't often do these, but I took these candles here, and there's an argument to be said, do we just bounce from it and we head back up and we go to that sort of 70, 71 level that I've talked about before, and we just resume Bitcoin's dominance? Or do we actually see an actual alt season, and again, kind of taken this from here, like what we saw before, and we kind of have this breakaway and this fall down, and again, back down to around about 40%. The yellow line is signaling the 1st of December, kind of giving us an idea of where the bull market is potentially 4-year cycle going to end. This kind of fits, this does fit from a timing point of view, and also a level that people may expect. I'm not sure that, down to 40% is where we're going to get to. I'm be honest, strategic reserves and everything else, we can see that money is going to be recycled from Bitcoin. I accept that. But whether or not that many people are going to sell, I'll just be led to believe. What is interesting, if this happens and we do go on, then the question really is about the 4-year cycle and how long that could take. Because granted, this is just a ghost feed. Could be, we could squeeze it like this, we could make it like that. We don't know. I appreciate that. But, if it's a similar kind of time frame to get up another 10% from that 60, then we are going to be going into 2026 for that to happen. So something to bear in mind there. And then, if we have a look at fib levels, and where was I drawing this from? Oh, yeah. There's an uncanny, this is from, again, December 20. So the last full cycle almost of an alt season, and then a Bitcoin dominance. And you kind of have a look, and these levels, they're fairly good. So this drop we had in November went to the 618, rejected back down to 0.5, I suppose. We've climbed back through it, stalled above it, and then we've just rejected again from the 786. And what did we bounce off? The 618 again. So there's definitely some arguments to be said that we just need to temper our excitement. And I am thinking, it's been good these last couple of weeks for our portfolios, and that's fine. My worry is that, we start to see people talking about their portfolios and how much they've made and how hard it is that they've held on. And I just worry that actually we got a little bit ahead of ourselves a little bit too soon, particularly when we have a look at things like alt seasons. We know, we've talked about this before, these moves up, they burn bright, okay? But the brightest stars die first. And so, it shoots up and then it cools off. And we've seen that all the time. We aren't in this alt season 75 yet, but when we get there, we're at 55. When we get there, we don't normally stay up there for that long. So just bear that one in mind with where that may be in terms of it. Now, I will accept that in 2021, we stayed in alt season for around about 3 months, which was January to end of March, middle of April, before we saw that drop off over the summer. But yeah, it's nice to see us moving. Honestly, it is. This Bitcoin season that I've been harking on about for a while. It's good to see it break. And you can see the speed at which it has broken. We broke through this 10th of July. So in the space of 12 days, we've gone from 25 to 60, right, settling at 55 right now. And that's how quickly alts can move. And again, alt season and fear and greed index here, about 50-50, well, 50 out of 100, should I say. That's 50 of the top 100 coins outperforming Bitcoin, or 49, should I say. And fear and greed, not particularly that bad, 67. We're not in extreme greed. We're just working our way into greed. So it's a kind of healthy position for us to find ourselves with Bitcoin right now. I touched on this before. and ignore the title. I don't really care about the Bitcoin run is likely close to being over. I'm not interested in that. I'm actually interested in XRP. XRP made an all-time high. Don't know if it was yesterday or the day before at $3.65. And as I say, as one of the legacy tokens with the XRP army out there, this is probably one of the main coins that I think, or projects, tokens, cryptos, whatever you want to call it, that is going to encourage retail to get back in. Because what you're now going to have is you're probably going to have dormant army members that, literally bought at the peak of 2017, maybe bought back in 2021 as well. And they only ever seem to stick their head above the sand once XRP makes a new all-time high. Well, they'll be dusting off their portfolios and showing it to their mates at work or wherever, and just sort of trying to entice them. Look, you see, I've held on to this. This is it. It's going to go to $10. You wait and see, whatever that move may be. But it is interesting that I don't know where the article actually talks about it. I don't think it does. Oh, here it is. That is where that move has taken place. We'll have a look at XRP's charts in a moment. Let me just catch up with the chat box. I've been optimistic on the poll for the first time ever, so please don't upset me. What I would say that, it's been a bit hit and miss recently, but I tell you what, Avenger Call Tuesdays, they're normally quite wild for price action. So I hope it hits too. I hope it keeps on going. Been hearing a lot of bullish news on ETH of late from Wall Street. In addition to those two companies I mentioned in the last live stream, there's another called the Ether Machine. Yeah, I've seen this stuff on the Ether Machine as well. Hey, I'll be the first to say, hey, it's good to see that it's finally waking up. I still think, Solana or whatever has done far better this cycle. But, the reality of it is, okay, I appreciate Solana does have an ETF, but Ethereum's really the only ETF in town right now. As the Solana one's quite small, and it's an altcoin. So if the interest is picking up in that, I will accept that. Where we see that rally goes, where that price may go, may not be as high as we hope, we think. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm not going to give any comment on Ethereum's potential price because I just haven't followed it enough this season. One of the things, oh, sorry, there was another comment there. So it's 3 companies announced in the last few weeks that they're setting up an ETH version of MicroStrategy. All good news to be hearing. Agreed. So I was watching a crypto YouTuber called Camel Finance today, and he made a point at referencing this chart here, which is not his chart, from a guy called Bitcoin Data 21. I'd never heard of him before. He's on Twitter if you want to follow him. And it's about retail, because that's what I was interested in, is when are retail coming back in? And the point here, what you can see on the chart, you got Bitcoin's price action at the top, and then on the bottom, you've got Coinbase is ranking on the App Store. Okay, so there's a little metric down here, 500th position, all the way up to, I think it got as high as 3rd or 2nd, maybe even 1st in some of these peaks. But what is quite interesting, the correlation is that when it gets above 50, and 50 is this red line on the App Store in terms of downloads, kind of highlights that retail are rushing in. But that also seems to coincide, as you can see, with local tops. Okay, so we had it in 2017. Now this was mental because it had just launched then. It was impossible to get on Coinbase. I was one of them, downloading the app, checking every day so you can get in. But it gets above 50, bit of a local top here in beginning of January 21. Then we had that sort of build up into sort of the Bitcoin peak of 64,000 in April. Again, coincided with this climbing up, cools off and drops massively down to like 400 as the price drops. And then suddenly, it's not as the price goes up, we get to this ridiculous point here where, Bitcoin's price is again back at sort of 60,000, and then suddenly it heats up again. We get to the top, and it just correlates with tops so well. Similarly, in recent times with the election after Trump winning, the inauguration, all of that kind of stuff. Each time we have peaked in here, it's marked a local top. And just on this far right hand side, which I think you can probably just about see, I think at the moment, I think it's at 114 at the moment. So we're not at that 50th position, but we're certainly getting close. And so I suppose, get my little pen, by the time it gets here, we start to see this start to shade in red down, down this line. We want to see Bitcoin's price obviously move up to there before it sort of marks that peak and we see that return come back down. So not something that you're going to, just go, right, this one indicator, Coinbase's app is at 50, I'm selling everything. But again, it's just interesting to see when retail are coming in. We know retail are last to the bowl, and they get to bask in the sun the shortest amount of time. But man, do they get hurt in that or sunburnt in that point. I don't know where my analogy was going there, but you get the point. So yeah, we want to try and see. I'm trying to just take on as many metrics as I can as to try and understand where retail are. And it feels like things are heating up, and they've really heated up. This spike, this is down at the bottom. It's the beginning of July, and it was in the 300s, and we have shot up to 200 places over the matter of 2 weeks. So there's definitely something there, and I think this is the point I'm just trying to make for all of us at the moment. We think we're the genius. The reality is, you and I, we've been in long enough to just be able to benefit from this bull market at the moment. So, enjoy it as it's coming up, but just make sure you're not getting too caught up. And I was scrolling through, I was trying to find when I posted this on Twitter, and I was scrolling through something, and I posted something in the 6th of January, 2023. And I basically just said, if you only have a 6-month horizon on BTC, I'm afraid you ain't gonna make it. Think 3 years minimum. With that in mind, 16K BTC will be a steal you wish you took advantage of in 3 years' time. It may go low. So what? This was when I was buying in. It was hard to remember because it's like £13,000, but I think it was around about high 15, 16, $17,000. But the point here is we're 2.5 years on from that, and I still think that Bitcoin's probably one of my best plays. And I think the point I'm just trying to make there is, for us, it's kind of a bit easy because most of us have been in the market at least a year, maybe longer. So time in the market is better than trying to time the market. So now we're seeing everything rush in. Don't feel you now need to find funds from somewhere else to just plow in because everything's going up. There's a good chance that actually the bubble will pop in the next couple of months. And so just be grateful that you have had that opportunity over the last 12, 24, 36 months, whatever it has been, to position yourself to where you find yourself right now. And I haven't really harped on about it for a while, but really start to think about how you're going to exit. What's going to be your triggers? Don't be that person that round trips it. Now, do I think this will be my last market in crypto? Absolutely not. I don't think so. I don't really think I'll ever leave. But I want to try and take advantage of the top. And it's hard to time the top, ultimately, isn't it? And so what we try and do is we try and find indicators for where the bottom are. And again, in that video I put out last week was about top indicators. If you actually watch the video from the conference that I did in February, I talked about a few bottom indicators. And wherever we decide we're going to get out in the top, whether it be, using, they're both the same bloody color. Just a second. That's not what I wanted. What's this? Sorry, give me a second. Oh, it's on the monthly, that's why. Okay. So let me get rid of that. Don't need that one. Whether it be the 50 EMA on the weekly, so we break the 50 EMA and you decide you're going to get out, fair enough. However you decide to get out. One of the things that is pretty good to look out for, the next cycle or whatever, is when to get back in. And if you go on the monthly time frame and you put the 50 EMA in, which is, I suppose, kind of around about the 200 EMA on the weekly, except for a short period of time back in 2022, a la the FTX debacle, the 200 EMA has always been a fairly good bottoming area for the market. And what we're seeing at the moment is its current level, it's at 50,000. So we don't know where that will be when the market tops, but it's something to bear in mind that, time in the market, if you want to sort of try and reset yourself for the next 4-year cycle and get that time in the market so that you can be the genius you know, exit wherever you can exit, however you decide to exit. And then if you can just hold strong through a bear market, and there will be a bear market of some sort, and see where you can re-enter. And maybe it's not 50,000 by the time it happens. Maybe it's at 60,000 or 70,000, however long it takes us to get to where we need to get to. And yeah, just sort of look to find that level to re-enter back in. And that's kind of where we were sort of back in here. We're on the monthly, we're using the weekly to get back in. And it just stands as a fairly good indicator. And that's certainly how I'll probably try and play it. Fingers crossed, obviously. And yeah, you know, the longer we go with this, the rarer it's going to be one of those fortunate few that actually gets to hold one full Bitcoin. I don't know how many of you own one full Bitcoin, but there's only ever going to be 21 million of them. And sometime in March 2026, the 20 millionth Bitcoin will be mined. That would mean there's only a million left from, you know, for the next 120 odd years or however long it takes. But as it's becoming more and more popular, as BlackRock are well on the way to owning a million themselves, Strategy well on the way, United States are wanting to do that, it's going to become harder and harder to actually own that one. So maybe you can't do it right now, but you may want to think about next cycle, just setting that aside as one of your little side goals, using some of the profit you make this time to be in the less than 1% club. But at the moment, you know, only one Bitcoin out of 8 billion is 0.01% of the population. So yeah, fairly impressive if you can do it and hold on to it for a long period of time. Not sure what this chart was for. So we'll just get into now, having a look. Let's just close some of these and save my computer. Sorry. Let's have a look now at some actual charting. So, yeah, as I mentioned, Bitcoin daily time frame now, but we can have it with a few vectors and everything else. And I kind of like its price action in around the 10 EMA. We shot away from it in that move up, and then we've just consolidated to allow the 10 to catch up with us. And that gives us a fairly decent opportunity for a springboard to move up. And don't forget, we've not really lost the 10 since the 24th of June. There's been a day where we went under it, but generally the 10 has really helped us here. So that's good to see. Now, of course, I talk about it all the time, that, I think that is an area that we need to consider. We may end up closing. A couple of reasons there. There's the 50 EMA. We don't know when it's going to hit, but it is. There's a CME gap here as well, down to like 12,500. 95% of all CME gaps get filled at some stage. So that would also make sense. Maybe we don't close this vector candle, but I do think that's a fairly, high probability that ends up happening, even if it's just a sharp wick down and it brings it back up. And to me, that's just a net positive in terms of, scaring those out there, but also the big boys filling their order books on the way back down, because they would have sold here and they'll want to take an opportunity to do that before we then go and make the move. But you can clearly see the range. And then if we actually look on the 4-hour time frame, it kind of makes it even more apparent, because all we've really done on the 4-hour is just range across this 50 EMA. Again, we broke out of it, vector candles all the way up, breaking out, and then we've just managed to sort of range and sort of build that level of stability in and around here, the cloud sort of catching us. And these, I've left it drawn there. They're the vectors from the daily that I think we may end up having to take. And there's a 200 EMA down there, which is certainly a pretty healthy target for us to try and have a take at. Looking at Tau, if I just do it on the... So I've followed in Alan's books. I've actually finally put an image on here, the Gandalf line, and that sort of 315, 320 level really was a Gandalf line there. We broke through very nicely, strong 3 green vector candles in a row, the blues, and we started to consolidate. But again, can you see, a bit like Bitcoin, we've come back to the 10 EMA. Now the 10, the 20, and the 50, they're a little bit more spaced out there, but generally that's working quite well. And this wick, I'm going to have to delete this white line just for a second. You can kind of see even today, wick down to it, and then we bounce strong off it. I know it's a red candle at the moment, still 4 hours to go on that one. But, what have we done? We've We've moved down here. We found our basic consolidation. You could almost say bottoming pattern of some sort down there. You know, one move up. We need to find that sort of lower low, reverse the trend, and off we go. And we can start talking about rise counts after that. But we've cleared this high. We've cleared this high now. So the next real battle for us, I mean, arguably, you could draw that there and have it on the closes in and around 466. And there, 490. We break both of those, and that's not too much of an ask, really. And then it is clear space all the way back up to these levels here, back to 700, back to that all-time high retest, and those vectors there. So, you know, in terms of where that's gone, I think it's a fairly good move from it. Now, if we go down onto the 4-hour time frame, again, this white line, you can see where we're working down to. It's just representing the 50 EMAs. So there's a few lines on here now. Let's get rid of a few. We don't need these now. So we've had that move up. Again, you know, come back down naturally. Can't spend too much time away from 50 EMA, particularly when we go down to the lower time frames. And we're just bouncing from that. But again, you know, in terms of trend reversals, it is there. Now, of course, with the 4-hour, we do have to have a look at this. We've had a couple of, you know, wicks up here that have been sold quite aggressively. So what we're really looking for an element of strength then is, I mean, if we happen to close below 427, I'll take it. Absolutely do not want to close below, let's call it 405, you know, and this becoming some sort of double top with a neckline in and around there. Let me get rid of this. We don't want to be seeing that. But right now, the 50 EMA has done as well. And so whilst, yes, okay, there's a high test candle there, 7 minutes for it to close, and maybe we do enter back down here and there's an opportunity for that next move up there. And for those of us that, like myself, we're not traded minded, we might be thinking, actually, there's an opportunity for a trade of some sort in and around that kind of level, although I probably don't like the stop there. I'd be going on a much lower time frame for that. I mean, speaking of lower time frames, let's just clear these so we can actually see them. We go down onto something like the 15. We kind of have a look at what Tal's been up to here. Again, okay, it's not the 50 EMA, lower time frame, it's not as strong, but the 800 EMA, nice strong reaction from that. Got us back up to the 200 EMA, strong reaction off that. We're kind of at the 50 EMA at the moment. Want to just see if we can react off that and just keep on building these legs up. I mean, that's the question mark right now, isn't it? With where we're going, you know, there's not too many vectors down there. There's a little vector here, which again on the 15 would expect to clear. So hopefully we can get some entry round about 434, maybe 430 or 432 at that level there. Just coming down, touching this again before we move across. There is a tiny bit of a vector still down here at 418, which maybe worst case we end up dropping back down towards. But yeah, something to consider for that. So let's have a look at some of the other ones, and I'll keep these just on the higher time frames because I know most of you aren't in them. So near's an interesting one because let's just get rid of the fib. It's obviously from previous. What's happened? Daily time frame. Okay, we've formed a double bottom here. We've bounced up through it, but we've actually come crashing into that 200 EMA. And near's had such a bad price action for so long. We've still got the 200 and the 800 in our way. We have actually rejected off that at the moment. A little bit of work to do. And you could argue that even if we did, if this is a double bottom, that's the neckline we've got to break through. And now, if I put that, I don't know where that fib was, but if we draw that fib over it now, that neckline is at the 0.05. So yes, okay, we've got something at 3, but for the likes of near, we've got to really see it kind of bust out through that one, which Link has already led the way and done. So Link, we've had that double bottom as well. We had that neckline in and around here. We've managed to clear above it, and we've seen those returns. And there's kind of just, you know, a little bit of a vector candle up there that, you know, could be quite attractive. My only concern with Link, and you'll see it on a lot of altcoins that move, is it's starting to look pretty spread out. That's, you know, the reality of where we see there. These EMAs were getting quite stretched. 10 EMA, it's been best part of a week since we've seen it. I think we're going to see some sort of pullback back there, if I'm perfectly honest. There is a potential of a golden cross occurring with Link, with the 50 and the 200 crossing down there. But I wouldn't be surprised if we retest the 10. We've been away for it for quite a while. Ondo, I must have drawn this from thingy. So we've got the fib already on there, similar to near and Link, double bottom. Neckline is tied up with the 618, which we've already actually had a rejection from. We're kind of hoping to find a bit of support potentially off the 0.5 and the 10 EMA. Maybe take that attack up again. We'll have to wait and see. SPX one I actually do like because I have it obviously, but unlike Link and Ondo and a few of the others, Ethereum, which I'll show you in a moment, it hasn't stretched that far away. You know, the 10 and the 20 have been retested in the last week. So we're making that nice move. And I drew this a couple of Fridays ago. You know, that cup and handle, that would be the top of the handle, is breaking out now. You know, there's a potential move up there. And we actually breached in for meme coin getting over $2 recently. So I kind of like the price action on SPX, not going into too small a time frame there. Ethereum now, let's just get rid of that. So again, a bit similar to Link, it's had that such a strong move. You know, remember, beginning of the month, the 10, the 20, the 50, the 200, and the 800, all of them were here. All of them were squashed in there, and then we've shot away, and we have just left these for dead. I just feel that, you know, there's some sort of retest back here, which what I prefer to see for that move up. But looking at Ethereum on the lower time frames, there's still potential for a positive move. So on the 4 hour, okay, we finally caught up with the 10 and actually the 20, and we're now kind of below it. We've been sort of wicking below it. Still got 2 minutes till this one closes below it. Potentially then we do see that sort of 3,500. What that may do for the rest of the altcoin market, we'll just have to ultimately wait and see as well. But I think there's a potential for that to happen. Still remaining bullish, but just trying to get that touch. And we haven't hit the 50 EMA really since on the 4 hour since the 7th of July. So 2 weeks and then some. On the 15-minute time frame, I've not actually looked at this today. I mean, you could argue we're just kind of ranging in and around here. We are still in a bit of a downtrend on the 15-minute, and we're kind of below a lot of these actions here. But we found support previously at sort of 3,600-ish, and so we just have to wait and see if we can hold that there. I don't know if there's a. I'm not sure where to draw if I'm being perfectly honest. I mean, Jesus, take that move all the way up. Okay. So we can kind of see that move all the way up. That sort of 3,600 kind of level, making a bit of sense while we've seen a couple of bounces in and around there. I appreciate it's not the most accurate, but it was quite zoomed in when I drew it. Hype. Not done anything with it, don't anything, but similar to SPX, nice move. You know, it's sticking with the 10 and the 20, building some support on the daily time frame. I'm quite happy with how that's moving up. Solana, strong move here. Feel like this one again needs probably a pullback. And in the last couple of days, there's a nice vector candle there for it to recover back to the 10. And although it did just about touch the 10, it hasn't actually touched the 10 since the 16th. And yeah, that's from 160 to 200. So, you know, what's that? 40% increase. No, not that much. 20% increase. 25% increase. Come on, get your maths right. Without really a retest of that there. Again, potentially a golden cross happening right now on that, but certainly something to have a look at. And then XRP, which, as I say, I am still in a trade on this one at the moment. This one has had a hell of a move. I'm pretty nervous about the trade because it's actually in a worse position than any of the other altcoins I've said in terms of how it's spread out from the 10, the 20, the 50. In fact, how is it doing? It is coming back down the 15. You'll have a look in a moment on that one. So I think there's plenty of room for this to sort of recover back, still remaining bullish. But I think the ultimate sentiment of actually clearing its all-time high, Thursday last week, has probably sort of helped rejuvenate that in terms of price action. Down on the 4 hour, you know, the 10 and the 20, it's still holding some of these. So, I don't think that's particularly the worst place for it to find itself in. I have been trading it on the 15-minute. I know, nosebleed territory, but that's how I like to just sort of trade those. And so today, I think I posted this in Discord, just the thought process. Double bottom, neckline there. It went up. I'll be honest, I got stopped out with this recovery down here, but I was then playing the Brinks box and this red vector candle. So I was able to get back in on this green candle, not at the bottom, sadly, around about 3.47-ish. And we've seen that move all the way back up, just down again on the 50 EMA, and then finding some support on that. So I'm fairly comfortable with where that one sits. I won't be leaving this one open overnight. I explained my thought process in Discord on those ones. But yeah, a fairly healthy move. I've certainly recovered whatever I lost down in this move, and it's just, where does it finally sit before I end up just ultimately closing it? But that's where it is. I think, just talking or having this on the screen whilst we're chatting, I think there's opportunity for people to trade. If you know how to trade, you just haven't done it, whether you've just been too focused on subnets or you just haven't really felt comfortable in the market at the time or whatever. I certainly feel like the volatility is the trade. I'm not just looking for longs. Remember, I'm on a much smaller time frame. If there was a short opportunity, I'd try and take it. I talked about one today. I don't have it up. Let's have a look. I was thinking maybe there was a Casper short to be had. I was kind of waiting to see. Yeah, down here we were at the time. I was waiting to see if we were going to lose this 200 EMA. We haven't, but as you can see, we're still below this. I think if we do lose this 200 EMA, I think there's potential opportunity for a short trade to be had, especially as I understand it, this was all done off the rumor of a Binance listing. So maybe we might see that sort of run out. So I'm not bothered whether it's shorts or longs that I'm playing. I'm just starting to have a look at sort of opportunities that are potentially out there for me to play. I'll try and post some in there. It's not really, if I'm honest, particularly like doing that, just because I don't like the responsibility of people thinking that I've done the dirty on them or anything like that. So anything I do see, do it at your own risk, obviously. But I encourage and welcome the discussions of anyone else posting any potential trade setups in the trading feed on the Discord channel. I think it's always good to just have a chat about some of those. I think there's some very, very regular people that do it, and they've obviously got their methods. So, have a look at them as ultimately as you see fit. With that in mind, I've rambled on for just about an hour. And I think that's probably about enough. What I would say is, it's great that we've seen these moves take place. Let's just see how we see true alt season. I should have ended the poll. It's about 50% you think that we're in that true alt season. 30 you think it's a pullback. 17 appreciate you don't know. I think there's just a couple of things that we just need to just get those extra confirmations in terms of whether or not we've got that alt season. I don't know where I drew them now. Not there. But ultimately, that break of 60 for me, I will put it on the screen in a second. Don't worry, I'm just drawing them. That break of 60, and then the sort of real break of 55. If we can lose both of those, I think that true alt season is there. Otherwise, we might just find this is a mini alt season like we've seen a couple of times in the past. But yeah, why not try and take advantage of it, even if it's just a small portion of your portfolio. Ultimately we're here to try and maximize what we can. And this is kind of the best time in the cycle to really do it. There's volatility to be had on the lower time frames. But if you're a higher time frame kind of person, the trend's kind of moving still towards that frantic bullish kind of move at the end. There is volatility you've obviously got to be careful of. So the higher time frame, the longer you want to leave these open, just bear that in mind in terms of stops and etc. I will be going live early on Friday morning. I'm off down to the Oasis actually, so I want to try and get that out of the way in the morning rather than in the afternoon. It'll be trading focused. We'll probably update on some of the other trades that I have open if I've not posted any in Discord beforehand. If you have any tokens you want to have me to have a look at, then just tag me in Discord in the Avenger channel thread, and I will look at them on Friday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy looking at your portfolios. Just enjoy seeing red candles on Bitcoin dominance and seeing how that works out for your can't remember the term now. Your portfolio. Other than that, trading pub usual time on Thursday, charting on Friday, and I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.